Good morning, everybody. Good morning, our community. Today is the day before the launch. Holy smokes. We have been working late. We've been up early. There are donuts in the office. It's a sign of everybody working crazy hours. This is Wong's. I'm not going to make you guys listen to me eat right now, but it's really tempting. This is day 43. Good morning, Tom. How are you, handsome? Did you get your hat? I want to see it on your head, on your dome piece. We got it sent off to you a couple of days ago. Nice shirt. Thank you. Mom got me the shirt. Mama, and of course, my family, we found out that we're Irish this year. My dad is adopted, and we had no idea. This whole time, I thought I was Spanish. I thought I was predominantly Spanish. Turns out I'm less than 20% Spanish, but I'm freaking 80% Irish. Absolutely wild. I had no idea. So anyway, my family, we're all about the Irish stuff this year. We're really celebrating. Happy Irish Day, Happy St. Patrick's Day, Deanna. Good morning. Good morning to you, JP.
Good morning, sir.
I like the community shirt. Looks good. I love it. Good morning, Christian, my partner. Good morning, Amy Serpa. Women's empowerment tonight. Yes. Yes, the first gang up and running. Orange, what is it? Our community. We're gonna start. People are gonna start. Doing that kind of stuff. I have a feeling. The women's group is gonna be the first, like, women's empowerment at our community, and the next thing you know, it's gonna be a gang.
It already is, bro.
It's pretty much already a gang. Yeah, it's pretty much already a gang. We had Abel here with Temecula junk pickup this morning. We're getting him added to the app. We've got a lot of exciting things going on. I've been talking to a lot of people that I haven't talked to in years, Amy. In years. It has been amazing. It has been exciting. Of course, we welcomed Rose Marie Greven to our community. We welcomed her to our EXP. Very excited about that. That's very exciting. It's very exciting to be partnered with Rose. So I'm very excited about that. Guys, I don't mean to brag, but our community comedy club right here, it's sold out. Bam. That's sold out. See that place right there? This beautiful place that we're creating? It is already sold out, but do not fret. Johnny Herrera talked to the comedians about adding a second show. So we're going to do that. We're going to go ahead and add a second show. We've already done it. The tickets are now on sale. There are only 40 more tickets that have been released. I have a feeling they will sell out too, but I'm optimistic. I'm always optimistic. But the signs are pointing to yes, it's going to sell out. So be a part of it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited about it. I'm going to the first show. I don't know if I'll be able to stay up late enough for the second show. I'm just kidding. Anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, cool. Let's jump in, shall we? We're going to start off with the counter offer environment. Let's see how. Oh my gosh, that's not straight at all. Serpa, take two. Like leaning back too much, I think. Okay. Is that better? That's a little bit better. Should get like a level started before we get going here in the future. Okay, we do have a level. Okay, we're going to talk about contingency provisions. So we're going to talk about contingencies. Oh, geez. I told you guys that we were going to end up scooting over. And it happened already. Serpa, I don't respect these boundaries. I don't respect them. I do what I want, damn it. All right. Counteroffer, contingency provisions. We're going to get into the elimination of contingencies. Dum, 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 dum. elimination of contingencies. Here, I'll bring it really small so that we don't bring it any further. That looks ridiculous. All right, elimination of contingencies. Can everybody tell that I'm just like really excited to be like launching tomorrow? Everything that we've been working towards for the last
Years.
for like the last 6, 7, 8 months as a crew, but really the last like 3 years for me, ever since I pitched our community network at a winery 3 years ago. Very exciting. Okay, elimination of contingencies, and then cancellation of excuses. We're not going to do cancel. That's kind of a. You could read chapter 44 on your own if you would like. That sounds kind of silly. Okay. What we could do is we could, getting ahead of excuses, right? So talk about getting ahead of excuses, like sort of like some of the objection handling that comes along with getting things set up, getting yourself set up for a successful escrow, all of those different things. Shall we? We shall. Okay. All right. So let's start off with the counteroffer. There's a book that is starting to circulate, which I have not read, which is Never Split the Difference. I was like, ooh, I like that. That's a clever title for me to add to my shelf and then maybe not read. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to get to counteroffer, and we're going to talk about, first off, you always counteroffer. You almost never lock things up on the first go-round unless you have been negotiating verbally. Now, I'm a big fan of seeing what you could get done verbally. I'm a big fan of it. And in fact, let's talk about that a little bit here. Verbal negotiations. So what we'll do is we'll talk about the verbal negotiation. Okay. We'll talk about getting it in writing. Because what do we always say here? We say if it is not in writing, it doesn't exist. If it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. It is not happening. Okay. So we're going to talk about the verbal negotiation of a counteroffer. We're going to talk about writing the counteroffers, and then we're going to talk about confirmation of acceptance in opening. Right. So, and we're not going to get too much into opening because we've already talked about this in yesterday's class. Was it you guys or was it the kids? Either way, we're not going to flip and talk about it today. Peace. Okay, it's not going to happen. All right. So the first thing that I really like to do is I like to see how much I can get done verbally, if we're in that sort of and of course this is like exaggerated on the HGTV episodes of where like he walks out with a cup of coffee and a pastry and he's like, oh hey, you know what? Just go ahead and enjoy your pastry. I'm gonna go outside. I'm gonna make a phone call. We're gonna get this locked up. Okay. All right. And then he like steps out and he's like, hey, yeah, so listen, they really like the house, but it's not, they're not, and like there's like mumbling, but it's like, hey, so listen, they didn't like your initial offer of 1.1 million, but like they're willing to talk, and it turns out that they offered back at 700,000. It's like, what? Wow, how crazy is Canadian real estate? And you know what I mean? Like, so like, but down here in America, that things don't happen over a cup of coffee and a 15-minute conversation, unless you've just got like that much power, I guess, right? But a lot does happen verbally. The idea is, for me, if one person is willing to write the offer that I'm offering, there's a good chance that somebody else is willing to write it, right? Especially in a seller's market. The other thing that you want to consider is when you find both parties, and the buyer comes and they said, listen, I'm willing to do this, just don't put it on the market. There's a good chance that you could get more on the open market, but you might not be able to represent both parties. So you need to be in a situation to where your due diligence is, of course, always to the seller if you are the listing agent. Your due diligence is to the buyer as the selling agent or the buyer's agent. I know that some of that verbiage can be confusing on the contracts. So I'm a big fan of seeing what you could do to lock it up verbally. Now, there's a new attribute on the MLS, which I think launched this year, where you can have a coming soon listing. So a big part of what's going to happen in the very beginning, when you do a coming soon, is you're going to get some of the first verbal offers. You might get an offer in writing immediately, but a lot of smart real estate agents, like if they can, they're going to get you on the line, especially if they have a good relationship with you, right? And that's part of like the coffee conversation that you see that happens on HGTV, where they step out like, hey, listen, this is what's going on. In order to be able to have that sort of ability to get somebody to pick up their phone, you have to have good working relationships with other agents in the community. And in order to do that, it's beneficial to go ahead and play nice in the sandbox. That being said, don't ever accept the beating, right? Don't ever accept the beating, and especially don't accept the beating before you're even getting started. Like, you'll always get kickback whenever you start a new launch, a new anything. You start farming for the first time, so don't respect OGs for the sake of respecting OGs, right? Or you'll never get your game off of the ground, right? Like Michael Jordan didn't become who he was by respecting everybody in his rookie season. He came in, walking in as a player and saying, "This is what I'm going to do with my career," right? So, you can either eat or be eaten. I encourage you to learn how to hunt, okay, or surround yourself with people who know how to hunt. So, the verbal offer, you're going to start a lot of this in the coming soon process. It helps to have good relationships. Relationships are important in this industry. And if you don't have good relationships, you better control all of the inventory. Am I right? Like, that's the truth. If you don't have good working relationships, if you don't necessarily if you're not in a situation where people can play nice in the sandbox, you've got to control all of the inventory. So how do you do that? Well, you don't do it by buying more Zillow leads. You do it by getting into the community, right? And that's what it's all about. That's what the brand is all about. That's what we stand for. It's all about getting into the community, getting into the trenches, serving people, and then putting food on their table in order to have them put food on your table. So who are you building your relationships with, right? And a lot of these, I have negotiations that in some ways started years before because I just know people's negotiating style. I know who they are. They know who I am. So we cut through a lot of the bull crap. We talk a lot of the bottom lines and whatnot, and we get to it. And like, listen, this is not what I'm going to do. This is what you're going to do. And then it's like bam, 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 like a couple of rams. And then eventually you get to a point to where it's like you figure out what's going to work for everybody, right? Et cetera and so forth. All right. So then you come to writing your offer. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to the expiration of an offer. The expiration of an offer, people are like, hey, listen, we're going to send them an offer, and then let's have it expire for today at noon, and then we'll send it over there, and then that way they have to review it. Or like, listen, we're going to send it over there, and it's going to expire for Friday at 5 o'clock so that they know we're not messing around. And it's like, listen, it's Thursday on a seller's market. The house hasn't even been shown yet. You can have your offer expire whenever you want to have it expire. But the thing is, I have to respond to it. And then if I respond to it after it has expired, and then you choose to respond to that, then we still have the ability to have confirmation of acceptance and a valid escrow. So don't get too caught up on expiration dates. That's really something that... would somebody mind grabbing me a water? Thank you, Christian. I appreciate that. I'm feeling a little bit... I got that acid reflux kicking in, right? From not really having a very good diet. I've not eaten yet today. I don't do well in the mornings. Okay, so writing the offer, the expiration of the offer, don't worry about that too much. What you want to do, thank you so much, Christian. What you want to do before you write that offer is you want to see if it's going to get accepted. You want to see if it has a chance to get accepted. Sometimes people will intentionally lowball a listing price in order to generate additional traffic on their listing and then potentially double-end it. I don't like the practice. I think that what you do is you list it at market value and then you let people determine what they're willing to offer. So people, listing the house $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 below what it should be listed at in order to generate more buyer leads is a garbage practice. And anyway, I don't like it. There are things that you can do, of course, that will generate leads, but then you decide what sort of conversations that you want to have. It's sort of like the dealer listing the one car at $10,995 with everything else listed at $21,000 with no intention of actually selling you that car, like which is actually illegal. And I think that, anyway, I'd hate for something like that to become the case in real estate, but I think that it's that same sort of idea. It's illegal in the car industry to list a car for something other than what you intend to sell it for. You like if you're advertising that one car at $10,995, you have to be willing to sell that car at that price, which is very interesting. It's kind of people always talk about the car industry and this industry is not related. That's not true at all. Sells is sells. My friend Tom sent us a picture with his hat on. Good morning, Tom. Good morning, Tom. Good to see you, my brother. Okay, so we've got shirts too. We got like all sorts of good stuff. Okay, so here we go. So the expiration. It's good to see you, Tom. I appreciate that. You get the expiration of the offer, and then what will happen is you'll get eventually the confirmation of acceptance. But before this, the verbal, the writing of the offer, and the confirmation is this right here, which is the counter offer, right? Blah, 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 blah. And it falls into that area right there. Now, the counter offer, a lot of people, I almost feel like making this into a brain. It's a brain. The counter offer. A lot of people will sort of like skip over this part or like outsource their counter offer. But the thing is like the devil is in the details. So what you want to do is you really want to make sure that your counter offer doesn't have any unnecessary devil in the details. You want to make sure that everything is explained. Everything is clear. And we talked about yesterday, like part of the details is what is conveying, what is not conveying, when is possession. Is it going to be the day of confirmation at 5 o'clock? Or is it going to be, the house confirms, which means you officially have the new owner, right? And it plus 3 days. So that's called COE plus 3. So you need to figure out these sort of things. Is there a rent back? Is the furniture going to convey? All of these different things. And then, what are the contingency periods? Because sometimes people will write back and they'll say, 10-day loan contingency, and they'll send it over. Bam. And then you sign it, even though you have a VA offer, and they may not be able to, they cannot perform a 10-day loan contingency removal unless they're coming in with cash, regardless of the difference. So that's one of those things that you don't want to remove that loan contingency automatically. You also want to make sure that when you're doing these things in writing, that your team can perform. If your team cannot perform and you're putting it in writing, it doesn't matter what you wrote on a Saturday night at 8 o'clock and sent over. If the loan cannot be processed, the loan cannot be processed. If the clients cannot be approved to go up the extra $40,000, that can't happen. It's not going to be able to happen. If the house will not appraise, these are all these sort of things that you need to kind of think about and consider when, in this process. Okay, listen, they sent back an appraisal removal. They don't want us to back out because the house is not appraised for what we offered for it, which means that we're going to have to pay the cash for the difference. And if you're paying the cash for the difference, do we have the proof of funds to show that we can do it plus the down payment, plus the earnest money deposit, et cetera, and so forth. And that requires an intelligent market analysis based on what you think the house will actually appraise for. Okay? Because the loan who is issuing the bank, they're going to make sure that they're protecting their asset, especially in a VA or FHA situation, VA condition where 100% of that loan is guaranteed, right? 50% of the loan is guaranteed, 25%. Anyway, that's what happens when I get into the details right there. Okay, thank you, Zach Block. Love you so much. Okay, so the counteroffer period is very important. You're going to find out about the appliances. You don't want to get confirmation of acceptance and they'll be like, oh, you know what, they really wanted the fridge. Or you know what, they really wanted to make sure that the chandelier, whatever, the piece in the backyard, the gazebo is going to convey. But it turns out that the gazebo is freestanding, right? And so you want to iron it out here before you get to here. You don't want to get to here and then sort of like retroactively try to send these counteroffers with addendums. Oh, we'll fix it with an addendum. We'll fix it with an addendum. There's so much that you can fix with an addendum, and then there's going to get to a point to where you're like, are your clients, like, do they really understand what is happening right now? Because I don't want to open an escrow without it being in writing and them seeing in black and white what it is. And I can tell you that, like, 80% of the time, people, they really want to represent their clients well, which means that they're almost willing to do anything in order to get the offer accepted. And sort of a lot of times that includes sort of like these like paper promises where it's like, hey, listen, we're going to do this, we're going to blah, 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 blah. But then what happens is you can't do that. Like with the VA loan, you can't do a free 90-day rent back because you have to occupy on day 60. Like we're going to have to get creative to go around it. But they extend the escrow. We're going to have to figure that out. So anyway, there are all things that you need to do right here before you get to here to set your team, your buyers, sellers, etc., up for success. Okay, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist, right? So let's talk about the contingency provisions. Okay, like how long a contingency is like how it's like your way to back out. Okay, now this being said, the standard contingency period for a buyer is 17 days, with loan for like being 21 days for VA. And there are some standard things that you see here with the 17-day contingency period. People typically want to see the inspections done, et cetera, and so forth. Now, that being said, we are in a seller's market, which means that inventory is very low. Buyers are competing a lot for one. Like if there's 20 buyers, there's one house, and they're all competing for that one house. Versus a buyer's market where there's let's say 20 houses and there's one buyer, right? And then so they've got a lot more power as that one buyer versus the seller's market where there's less inventory and a lot more buyers. So in these sort of situations, you're going to see in a buyer's market, people shorten the contingency periods down from 17 days to like 10 or 7, etc. for inspection. Now, this is one of the reasons why a lot of the VA loans are getting beaten is because these inspection contingency periods are less important when you have a lot of cash to throw around. And right now, there is a lot of, not only are there a lot of people coming out from Orange County, Los Angeles, San Diego County, and we welcome them. There is also a lot of foreign money that is coming in as well, buying up a lot of real estate. And we welcome them as well. Like come on in. If you're a neighbor, you're a neighbor. Let's figure it out, et cetera, and so forth. But what has happened is because of a lot of this, and here's the answer too to a lot of that, which is something that I just learned about. There are higher interest loans which will offer the cash difference for that appraised value. Did you know that, Zach Bach?
Yeah.
There are higher interest loans, Amy Serpa. I learned this yesterday. Rose told me this. Higher interest loans for these situations where you have a cash poor buyer that can qualify for the loan. What they'll do is they'll pay the cash, and then they end up owing them a higher interest rate for the cash.
That's exactly what I was trying to find. No kidding.
It exists. It exists. You need to talk to Rose.
I was just looking into this last week.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Like there's a reason why your net worth determines your net worth, and it's because people there's so much that I don't know. There's so much that I learn on like a daily basis. Every time that I come across a new thought, I'm like, oh my gosh, how come I didn't know that? That's so great. Thank you for telling me. So that's the way to go about it. So anyway, so that's a big deal. So instead of getting the loan at a 3.5% interest rate, you're getting it at 6% interest rate, but you're in a situation to where you're beating out the other offers. And then of course, if it appraises or not appraises, if you end up in a situation to where the market continues to go like this, and you have more equity in your home later, you can always refinance with whatever different program and then lower your interest rate. Okay. Anyway, those are the little golden nuggets that come from kind of tuning into class here. So contingency provisions, and we've talked about this at length in the past. Of course, this is termite. This is the home inspection. This is if you decide that you don't like the weather. Really, like buyers can back out for any reason whatsoever within their contingency period, and they're going to get their earnest money deposit back, especially if they're FHA/VA. As long as they have not removed the contingencies in writing, or you did not agree to an automatic contingency removal during the negotiations, you're going to be in a situation to where you are literally signing away. Okay, now I'm at a point to where we are at risk, to where if we do not perform, I stand to lose my earnest money deposit. That's a very real conversation that you're going to need to have whenever you remove contingencies. Listen, come hell or high water, we're at this point now to where it's day 21 or it's day 17 or it's day 10. Now for the next 20 days of this escrow, the next 10 days, the next 5 days, 7 days, etc., we are exposed to risk if we do not perform, which means I do not want you to do anything that's going to affect your debt. Good morning. I don't want you to do anything that's going to affect your debt to income ratio, like going out and getting another car. I don't want you to do anything that's going to put you in a situation to where there's a lot of different things that you want to talk about before you're removing contingencies. And again, we've talked about this, and I don't want to get too further derailed. But 10 days for the inspection. In that time, you've got the termite. And a lot of sellers will elect to get a termite inspection done, a home inspection done before they list, in order to avoid costly negotiations that come with, we didn't know that there was this, or we didn't know that there was that. We didn't know that the air conditioning line didn't have additional wraparound. It's like, hey, listen, the home inspection report is actually a part of our disclosure package. We send it over with our seller property questionnaire and our transfer disclosure statement, or we post it on our MLS. And if you do that, you're following the guidelines that were set forth in all of the literature that I've read, in like the real estate principles, real estate practice, and the real estate law, that gives you kind of the additional ability to protect yourself, protect your clients, and save your clients money, especially in a seller's market where 99% of their negotiating power happens here during the counteroffer process, and also before you even get the house on the market. Like getting it ready, getting the good photos, getting all that, all of the different things that you're getting the flyers out, establishing a buzz, making sure that people get an adequate amount of time to see it. That's all. That gives you time. Like when you tell people, hey, listen, we're not going to respond to all these offers. We're going to be reviewing offers Friday night at 8 o'clock. And then Friday night at 8 o'clock, you decide we're going to be sending out a multiple counter offer, asking for a response by Sunday night, and reviewing any additional, whatever it is that you decide that you want to do. We're going to be countering these two. But like I always tell people, do not review offers. Review offers as they come in, yes, but do not officially review offers until Saturday night at least. That way it gives people the additional time to review it, and then you have the additional conversations, and that way you can kind of lock it up by Sunday night, open escrow Monday morning, and then give people the respect of being able to move on with their timeline. Okay. The elimination of contingencies, again, so this actually ended up might being redundant. We kind of talked about this. So with sellers, like pretty much like the second that you accept the offer, you're like locked in. It's very difficult to back out. You're moving forward. So like if you accept an offer, you're going. You can back out because of an appraisal. You can back out because of you don't come to terms on repairs. But you can't back out because you feel like it. And so that you could become uncooperative, and then they might end up leaving anyway. But with the seller, once you have accepted, you've given confirmation of acceptance, it's very hard for a seller to then back out because they feel like it, right? Versus the buyer has an adequate amount of time. So like I tell people, listen, in the contract that we're sending over, we're going to send a 10-day inspection contingency period. This means that I want to get everything done in like the first 3 or 4 days. I want to get a home inspection done. I want to get that termite done. I want to get everything done. That way we know right away whether or not we're moving forward. If there are any repairs that we're going to request, we do it right away. And that way we're not dragging our feet and then forcing the seller in a situation to where they're losing value because the days on market is going up while we're performing. And then if we don't want to perform, we can move forward too, right? So in fact, one of the many ways that you could sort of like reduce your contingency period, especially your loan contingency, is by having your lender cover the cost of the appraisal. Okay, so if your lender covers the cost of the appraisal, that means that they can order it right away, right? So if they're able to order the appraisal right away versus waiting for the earnest money deposit to come in, they kick out that $400 right away. The appraiser goes out, it's ordered, and then that way we start finding out what the house is going to be valued at, et cetera, and so forth. And it puts your buyer in a better situation because we're not like negotiating repairs or waiting for the repairs and then like checking the clock, like, oh my God, is this house going to appraise? Because right now, that's one of the biggest and most stressful hurdles to overcome is that appraisal. The appraisal, getting that ordered right away. You open up escrow, it gets ordered. Bam. That puts your buyer in that situation to where they're being empowered at the front end of their contingency period versus the back end that on that 21 days where they're like, oh my God, what's it going to appraise at, blah, blah. There's only so much power that you have as a lender ordering appraisals. It's not like you get to call it, hey, Bob, you get to go order it. Because the appraisal's neutral. They're supposed to go out as a neutral party. But you can order it by covering the cost, sending them out, and making sure that it gets done right away so that it puts your buyer in a powerful situation. And they get to decide, looking at the whole picture, the termite, the home inspection, the home appraisal, and then that way that determines how much cash they're going to have to take to the table, et cetera, and so forth. Then they're in a much better situation at the front end. So I cannot stress how important that is to have a lender that does that. There are lenders that do that, that work locally. There's several of them that are very good. I could give you a long list, in fact, but there are also several that do not. And I can tell you that a lot of these people are not local. You cannot roll up on their office if all of a sudden they decided to stop picking up their phone. So it helps to have a lender that has an office that you can ride up to and be like, what is happening right now with my loan, right? If you don't have a relationship like that and your lender is located out of state, that doesn't put your buyer in a powerful situation when your lender goes MIA and they live 1,000 miles away or 3,000 miles away in a different time zone. Like a lot of these like New York-based, lending companies that close at 2 o'clock, and a lot of them call themselves veteran this or veteran that or this, that, and whatever, but they are open till 2 o'clock, and you feel like you're getting your loan issued by SIF, right? You feel like you're getting your loan issued by the government, and yet it is not a government entity. Isn't that interesting? You're going to get treated like crap because they know they can get away with it because you're military and you're used to getting treated like crap. Anyway, that's another tangent brought to you by excessive real estate knowledge and autism. All right. Elimination of contingencies. Sellers, you're pretty much locked in right away. You can back out due to a low appraisal. You can back out due to a failure to come to agree to terms based on repairs. Buyers, we've already talked about this. You've got kind of your 10, 17, 21-day periods, and that's part of the counteroffer period that you're negotiating right up at the beginning. So part of getting ahead of the excuses is preparing your buyer adequately, preparing your seller adequately for what they're getting ready to do, right? And this is sort of your preparation. Luck is what happens when preparation meets hard work. Is that what it is? Luck is when opportunity meets preparation. What old dead guy said that? I'm just kidding.
You can also sell it back out.
Oh, that's a really good point. Thank you, Zach Bach. So one of the things that's one of the great points. Thank you very much. So the contingency period, this also protects the seller if they're like, hey, listen, we are going to list our house contingent on finding a suitable replacement property, right? And then that puts them in a situation to where if they decide that they want to back out because they can't find something that's suitable, they can back out for any reason, and then the buyer gets to keep their earnest money deposit. They're opting out the cost of the inspection, et cetera, and so forth, but they're moving on, and it protects the seller. This is something that, and we talk about this all the time. This is something that we specialize in. What you do is you list your house you list your house contingent on finding a suitable replacement property, Okay, and then when we put in the offer contingent on selling your house. And that way you're protected, yada, 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 yada. And we've talked about this before, but the idea with stacking contingencies is that it was easier to do a little while ago. In fact, it's not. Zach, can you help? If you need, okay, thank you. So the idea with contingency periods is that you're protecting yourself, you're protecting your buyer, the seller is protecting themselves during that period. And in this market, instead of listing the house contingent on finding a suitable replacement property, what that would do is it would put you in a situation where now you're buying a house contingent on selling your house, which is not a powerful situation in this market. There's a lot of people trying to buy a house in a different state contingent on selling a house that's in California, or contingent on selling a house that's in Orange County. And even if it's an escrow, it's very difficult to compete with cash, as we are all figuring out, right? So what puts them in a more powerful situation often is to do either a free rent back or a rent back at the buyer's PITI, which is the principal, insurance, taxes, and interest. Thank you so much, Ms. Serpa. All of the wealth of information all around me. So the buyer's PITI, and what that basically says is it's a per diem daily based on the buyer's monthly payment. Okay, and that's typically a pretty agreeable stance that people are willing to go to. Is I will rent based on what your payment is going to be. That way you aren't offset in any way, shape, or form. And then what that does in this market is it puts cash in the pocket of that seller to then turn around and buy without having a contingent loan. If that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, let me know. Of course, my phone number is down there at the bottom of the screen. It's better to text me. I don't keep my phone ringer on. Okay, so getting ahead of the excuses, preparing your buyer. Part of this is like the high interest cash loans, which we've talked about. Determining how much cash they're going to need to bring into the table. And we talked about that too in our last class. How much cash will need to be brought to the table in order for a VA buyer to close in this area for like $500,000, right? So like preparing them, this is how much money you're going to need. These are your options, you know what I mean? And then also part of the preparation is not just, and this is what we talked about, like buyer's cost. What are your typical buyer's costs? Now, the other part of this is preparing your sellers. Like, what you encourage your seller to do and not to do. Seller's cost, seller's net. Because sometimes you end up in a situation where somebody might need to bring cash to the table to close, or they're short selling. So, like, it's either going to be a seller's cost or a seller's, I didn't seller's cost or seller's cost, or a seller's net. And we talked about how to calculate a seller's net yesterday. And then what, of course, to do if you don't have enough equity in your house to sell. If you end up in a situation where you have to sell and your job is moving you, but you don't have the equity for whatever reason, you're short selling. You're like the bank has to approve the sales price, et cetera, and so forth. So, getting ahead of the excuses. Seller's cost, seller's net, preparation for your buyer's cost. What type of loan program is going to be the best loan program for them? Are there first-time homebuyer programs? Is this first-time homebuyer credit or grant going to be passed by President Biden, which gives $15,000 homebuyer tax credit or grant or something like that? There's all these different things that are happening constantly, and it helps to be up to date on what is going on so that you know all of the different options. And the best way to know what is going on is to be around people that are also out there accumulating new knowledge, new information, finding out better ways to do things, better ways to practice. Together we can beat Zillow. Together we can beat these big box companies. We can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. I can tell you that much. You can't do it as the local pet store without having a great network. You can't beat Zillow without having a great network of business, a great network of people that are going to refer you business so that people don't get online and then figure out how to do it without an agent, which actually ends up costing them a lot of money. That's the truth. It doesn't save you money as a seller to list with Zillow. It might be convenient, but you should meet with a local licensed real estate professional wherever you are to figure out what your actual net would be if you were to test the free market. If you were to test it, instead of doing like the cash buyout program, what would happen if instead of like getting, hey, but I know that because of this one click that I could get an instant cash payment of whatever this is, $426,000, $400,000, $380,000. Instead, do you know how many? If one person's willing to pay cash for your house based on nothing else but the comps, do you think that somebody else might be willing to pay cash for your house that is going to look at more than just what your house is worth on paper? Me think so. Okay, all right. That was the 5-minute warning, which means that I have to start wrapping it up. I'm going to check the Zoom for any questions from you guys. And I will also check the Facebook to see if you guys have any questions. And then what we'll do is we'll move on because we've got a grand opening tomorrow and plenty of things to do. Plenty of people. Is there anybody here that's going to get pinched yet? Nobody's going to get pinched yet. That's okay. We'll find somebody, won't we? Okay, let's check it out. Facebook, anything. Good morning. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so this is what we talked about today. We talked about the counteroffer. How important it is to go from verbal to putting it in writing. Iron out the details before giving confirmation of acceptance, which will set the pace for your entire escrow. We talked about the contingency period. And the contingency period or contingency provisions. What do you need to do? When do you need to do it? When will you lose your earnest money deposit? How to not lose your earnest money deposit, et cetera, and so forth. We talked about the elimination of contingencies. When are you exposed to risk as a buyer, as a seller? How to protect yourself additionally as a seller by making your listing contingent on finding a suitable replacement property. Anyway, and a bunch of other things. And we talked about how to get ahead of the excuses by preparing your buyer or your seller for success by talking to them about their loans, the VA loan, the FHA loan, the conventional, USDA, first-time homebuyer tax credits, et cetera, and so forth. New high-interest cash loans that help to equal the playing field for cash or borrowers with good credit, because right now lending is so cheap. Right now money is so cheap compared to what it's been in the past, right? Okay, all right. Any questions? You guys know how to get a hold of me right here at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to do it. My name is David Serpa. That was day flipping 43. Is that where we're at? How far are we into this flipping dang thing? Day 43. Wow. Let me know if you need a new link for the Zoom, and I'll get that out to you. We've got the new link. Amy's got it. We've got it up on the Facebook page. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and everyone have an absolutely wonderful day. Adios, and happy St. Patrick's Day.